Zoom quit. Okay, don't do that. Okay, good.
Start the recording. I'm going to share a little bit about vulnerability today, and I'm going to bring in a couple of personal stories if you guys don't mind that. I'm personally being challenged to be more vulnerable and open in places like this that are, this is, to me, this is a safe space with the people who are here because we show up authentically with each other. But I'm also being challenged internally to speak more publicly about some life experiences, and that brings up shakiness. So I created a few slides. Vulnerability is really on my heart, and I do believe it is a profound part of healing. It goes really down to the core of us, because down close to the core is where we carry a lot of private things that we don't always tell people, and yet some of the things that we carry privately are the things that can affect our physical, mental, social well-being so much. There is healing to be found in finding a place to be vulnerable and to share some of the things that we don't talk about with other people. Hi, Sandra, welcome. It's nice to see you. We're just talking about vulnerability today, and I'm about to share a slide here. Okay. So I've called this one the healing power of vulnerability. And please, by all means, if this triggers a thought for you, you want to jump in and share something or say something, please just go ahead and do that at any time. You can just say Naomi and start talking, that's fine. So the healing power of vulnerability. Why is it hard? This definition really surprised me because it really did bring out the exposure side of it. Vulnerability is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. I was very surprised that it didn't talk at all about the positives of vulnerability, but I think what this captures is the way we all think of vulnerability and the true fact that vulnerabilities are places where you can be exposed to harm. And what it comes down to eventually is choosing when and where to open those places. The reason it's so hard is we all have past experiences where we have been vulnerable, we've chosen to be, or we have become vulnerable, and we've had people react to us. And that may have been during childhood, it may have been young adult years. Other things that are coming to me are like high school. Holy cow, are we vulnerable there? We can have the most terrible experiences. Job search, relationships, early relationships can be very difficult to bring up a lot of vulnerability, or we don't even know how to connect with people at that age because we haven't had any practice sometimes. Let's see. Social conditioning. As a society, especially Western society, we don't talk about negative experiences or feelings. By and large, society wants to push those away. We want to show up as capable, achievers. We want to show that we have everything under control. Power is very much valued in our society, and vulnerability is equated with weakness, almost unequivocally. Like you think vulnerability, you think exposed. We can't let anyone see that. And then I think there's a part of us, that evolutionary or biological part, where it's just the truth. Exposure of your vulnerabilities in the wrong way means death. The mother deer protects her babies. You don't want your baby out exposed to the predator. You want them huddled in a corner, kept quiet and safe, So there's many things within us and outside of us that say vulnerability is danger. So I want to share some of my experiences. I first learned about the power of vulnerability when I was in my late teens. I was in a church group that I'd grown up with, but I would often be in a youth group setting. So there might be a bunch of us sitting around in a circle. We're ages 14 to 28, something like that, usually all single. And you'd have these conversations or you'd have these Bible studies, and somebody would announce a topic or they would say, "Does anyone want to share?" And there would be silence, just straight silence around the whole group. And actually my husband, this is my husband, James, in both pictures, he was often a youth leader, and we talked about it sometimes. We weren't married at the time when I was in the youth group. We weren't dating or anything, but both of us was kind of the one that would eventually be like, okay, I'll talk because nobody else was. And it was around that time I learned that if you can be vulnerable, you can inspire so many others. And in that public setting, I would share a story. And then I would get three people come to me over the next week privately and say, "Thank you for sharing that. That really meant something to me. I didn't know that anyone else went through that." So, in a way, at somehow inside of myself, I determined I'm going to share. I'm going to be the one who will, like the sacrificial lamb, if we're sticking with the religious idea, I'll be the one who goes first because I see that it helps other people. Um, but that was only to a point because I had been taught certain things about who I had to be my whole life. I was taught from a young age, especially if you look at this first picture, you can see there's an expression on my face that isn't exactly pure joy. My eyes don't look very alive. Um, these are actually some church meetings, big church meetings that we flew down to Ohio to attend in Lima, Ohio. They were days after days of services. We went to hotels and then, you slept, you had little sleep because I had my 9-month-old baby with me at the time, 7-month-old maybe. Um, So it was constant, like, get dressed for church, look as good as you can, get the baby ready, go to church, go sit in the nursery when she needs to breastfeed. Okay, go back to church, behave, behave, behave. You're meeting all these new people. You have to shake their hands and say, "God bless you, brother." This is just the church environment I was raised in. And my whole life, I was taught your goal in life is to be a wife as a supportive person to your husband. That's literally what your role is. It's not to be yourself. You are to be a wife and a mother, and that involves supporting your husband, giving birth to children, mothering them properly, and cleaning your house. And this is your godliness. This is how you become the best you can be in life. This was my goal. But I got there and I had children and I married the husband and I was extremely unhappy. And I was not prepared for that because nothing had prepared me for the fact that you can achieve everything you're supposed to achieve in life and it might not be meant for you and you might not be happy when you get there. So I felt like I carried a secret around, and some of this was just a feeling deep down. I don't even know that I let it come to my head or out of my mouth, but I was deeply, deeply unhappy as a mother of young babies. um, there is so much more that goes with it because I was in a religious system that taught so much shame, but I carried shame because I couldn't tell anyone that I was unhappy. When I looked around, the other mothers in my church were doing what I was doing. They seemed kind of happy. They didn't say they were dealing with any shame or unhappiness. There was literally nobody for me to talk to because how do you tell them that you're the one who didn't achieve? You're the one who got to that point, and you're not fulfilled by what you've been told is the highest goal in life. It was the most painful place to be in. And I would try and try and try to keep performing, to keep doing what I was supposed to be doing. But I was just secretly, I woke up unhappy every day. I spent a lot of time in bed. I mothered my children. I was unhappy. I shouted at them. I felt raw all the time. And then there came a point where I had a spiritual experience and got to go deeper in my life. And it began to heal me because I began to realize from source or the universe or however you define it, that there is a place of unconditional acceptance. And I began to feel that. So if you look at the right picture, I'm still in my church. Whoopsie. I'm still in the church. I'm still wearing the clothes. I'm still having skirts down to my ankles and have to grow my hair long, but my face looks different. Because I was starting to know that I was loved deep down, no matter what anybody said. I was still a pastor's wife. Um, my experience is that shame thrives until you're able to have it met with empathy. And this started first for me with what I would have called God at the time. And then as we left that church before too long, actually this was a fall, and we left the following January, because we realized that it was a harmful environment for myself and my children to be in, and my husband. I had to start connecting with people, and I had to start taking off those layers and exposing the thoughts that were plaguing me. You're not good enough. Um, you're not a good mom. You're not a happy mom. All those things. I had to go deeper. Why is it important to be vulnerable? It's important because it's sharing our truth. This is not necessarily the universal truth of your life. This is how you perceive truth in your body. Deborah King is an author. She's a Reiki practitioner, and she does other kinds of energy healing with people. She wrote a book called Truth Heals. And she said, when we silence what's wrong, we silence what's right. I take this as the experience of feeling in your body, I am wrong. Something about me is wrong. Something about me won't get approval or love from other people. But when we silence that truth, we are silencing our actual experience in life. And that truth will harm us. Keeping it inside of us will harm us. She also says, I keep doing that, sorry. Everything that happens to us is stored in our bodies and the energy fields surrounding them. Ultimately, health and healing happen only when a body, mind, soul wants, needs, and is ready to face the truth. Even after a lifetime of suppression, a body, mind, soul that is willing to release painful secrets can heal itself, a family, even a nation. What ultimately saves us is what we were sure would kill us, the truth. Deborah, by the way, she had a beautiful experience, what I call beautiful now. It might not have been beautiful to her at the time. I believe she was abused when she was very young, and didn't know it. And she began to see energy healers at a certain time in her life. And literally these words about being abused by her father would come ripping out of her body. And it was a truth that had just been silenced so long she could never speak it. But when she started to heal, it was as if her body with force started to shove these words, these truths about her daddy hurting her out of her body. So she really knows what she's talking about when she says that truth held inside can kill you. So vulnerability needs to be modeled. Those who are able to be vulnerable model it for others, and this shows others that there is a way to show your true self. One person can pave the way for others to feel free of shame because they're not alone in their experience. Vulnerability needs to be met with non-judgment. So we have to practice it safely at first. I would suggest that this setting is a safe place to practice vulnerability because we are all on the journey. And we are all practicing this together. And we practice non-judgment when people are vulnerable. We listen with an open mind and an open heart. Vulnerability promotes true connection. We connect with others when we know we're not alone, and it heals shame. So Brené Brown does a lot of talking on shame. We've brought her in a few times now. She's such a lovely person who goes deep on these subjects. She says that shame needs 3 things to grow exponentially in our lives. It needs secrecy, silence, and judgment. And I put a note here because a few weeks ago I shared, I believe, some things about boundaries, and I shared some more of my experience within the kind of religion I was raised in. And Audrey gave me some very kind, supportive feedback. But as she did it, I hadn't felt very exposed as I was sharing, but her feedback, for some reason, I felt very exposed when she gave feedback to me. And I was talking with Summer about this yesterday, and what I realized what it was, it's that when people leave my religion that I was in, they're supposed to be silent. They're not supposed to talk about it. They're not supposed to reveal what their experience was. They're shamed as they're leaving. They're shamed before they leave. They're shamed as they leave, and they're shamed and silenced and judged after leaving. And for me to share something vulnerably with you, and then have somebody see that and actually give me feedback was a very exposed feeling, because it meant, oh, I'm undoing the silence. Now I could be hurt. Now somebody could see me and could know that I'm talking, and they'll be angry. I felt very exposed, and not in a bad way. I just realized, ooh, this felt really vulnerable. Shame is shame precisely because it has been silenced. Shame is the feeling I am wrong. Shame depends on me buying into the belief that I'm alone. I'm the only one who ever feels this way, who ever did that bad thing, or who can't do what others can do. I think the alone part of shame is the scariest thing. In a way, we're judging ourselves when we experience it. We're saying what I'm experiencing is very bad, and I can't let people see that. But shame cannot survive being spoken. It can't survive empathy. So if we find the right place to speak what we're ashamed of or what we find difficult, shame can't survive that experience. When we're met with empathy and with a listening ear, shame has to go. It's like a little gremlin, right? And it just has to leave. It's darkness. It can't stand where there's light. So here's my picture. This is me and Raylene at Summer's little party she threw when she opened a new healing space. And I'd just like you to see the difference in my face, where I'm with people who are talking, who are connecting about things that matter. And my cleavage is showing in this. This would not be happening, 8 years ago in the church that I was in. My body was wrong. That's the story that I was told growing up. A woman's body is evil. It's a distraction. It leads men astray. And yet here I am, vulnerably living my truth. And you can see much more happiness in my face. Vulnerable connection with others is the antidote to shame. It heals it. As we speak the truth of our experience to others and are met with open-hearted, empathetic listening, or others who just say, me too, we understand we're not bad after all. We're simply human. We enter into a loving relationship with ourselves. And we show up as our whole selves and provide space for others to be their whole selves. And the one other thing that's coming to me, because not all vulnerable experiences are about shame. Excuse me, I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see this. The other thing that Brené Brown talks about is, excuse the language, shitty first drafts, shitty first times. So she just launched a podcast recently, and she and her whole staff were in conflict. It was just a gong show, and they were all arguing, and they were all reactive. And she stopped everybody and said, whoa, 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 I know what's happening. We're all feeling shitty because this is the first time we've done this. So we feel exposed, we feel weak, we feel not good because we're not practiced at this. And so like Diane, even with your mom, sometimes we are just vulnerable, and it's so hard to feel that exposure, to know that she's vulnerable, and the love that you have for her means that you feel so exposed and open and fragile. And just that honor to come to yourself and say, I feel vulnerable. I just do. And to love yourself in that moment can heal the shakiness of it. It's not that you're no longer vulnerable. It's that you're just honoring what vulnerability is in that moment, and that you are exposed, and that is a very human part of life. It's not wrong. It's just being human. Any thoughts? Would anyone like to share anything before we start a practice? It's kind of a heavy topic. Can't hear you yet, Sandra. No. Oh no. You can do, there's, if you have the microphone down in the corner and an arrow next to it, there's a test speaker and microphone thing. And you might be able to do that. It'll run through your computer or phone's different settings. Oh,
Testing, testing.
Yep, we can hear you.
Woohoo. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, thank you. That's exactly what you're talking about, is really powerful, and it's what I'm trying to practice, but you've really reinforced how it's actually going. My truth is transforming my situation, but I need to keep going, and I really needed to hear that. So thank you. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree that I think it's something we all needed to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Sandra, one comment, Brené Brown again, she writes a preface to at least one of her books, and she quotes, I think it might be a Kipling poem, and it basically means the award belongs to the man in the middle of the gladiator ring, the one with sweat and blood on his and dust on his face. And it also means who you accept feedback from. So there are people you can be vulnerable to and let into that circle and accept that. And then there's people who aren't in this zone at all. They're not sharing, they're not living vulnerability, and you don't have to open yourself up to that. And you don't have to listen to feedback from them, because it's the people who are in the arena living it out who are the important ones, right?
I think that's a really, really good point you made, Naomi. I'm part of the Children's Heart Network. And it's really good to have that arena with other parents that have kids with hearts, with bum hearts in some way or another, because their experience is very different than other parents' experiences. And so it's really nice to have that arena or group to connect with.
Yeah, I agree. There's certain people who would give feedback who are not in that arena.
Yeah, and it's just a much safer and more comfortable spot to talk about the issues and the stuff that comes up than at soccer practice, for example.
Mm-hmm. And especially the things you might feel exposed in, like even as a parent, how you process the things that your child is going through and your family is going through. That's not for everyone to hear. You know, what's coming to mind is one of my brother who's closest to me in age. I would love to be able to be more vulnerable with him, but he has the thing where he needs to be in control and kind of he needs to come out of a conversation on top. Like, I argued well, I proved myself right, you know, and it just shuts down communication. So as much as I would love to share more authentically with him, and sometimes he dips down a bit further, and I can, but particular even religion, he's still in the church that I left, and that's a church where males are lifted up. They're the ones with the wisdom. The women are just supposed to take care of the house and not think a lot, you know. So even that power dynamic means that I can't just be open, because I won't be respected. I won't be met with empathy. I'll be met with judgment, or you should, or let me tell you what's right for your situation. And that just doesn't work. So I love him and I have boundaries. That's all. Yeah. So let me just check the time here. Okay, about half an hour. Sure. So we can head right into, just as long as I know all comments are wrapped up for now. Christine, are you good?
I just have one comment. If I take off, I have an appointment with my daughter's orthodontist online at 1:20. So if I disappear, I'm sorry, that's why, and it's not for a different reason.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And Christine, you're good?
Yes, I'm good. And I agree. I definitely needed to hear that today.
Oh, good. Okay, so after that, I invite you to just take a moment and shake your body a little bit. Vulnerability can be a sense of exposure, a sense of not quite knowing if we're safe. Can be a shakiness in our body, a little bit of adrenaline, and just shaking it out a bit can bring back a sense of ourselves that we are inside of our body, and our body is a very safe place. I invite you to sense the support of the chair that you're on. And even as you breathe deeply from your belly, can you feel how supported you are by your back, by the chair, and by your own self that shows up repeatedly to hold you up as you take new steps in life and as you experience new things, even the shaky things. There's a wisdom in knowing that when we can't control, when things are shaky, we can come back to the present moment. And in the present moment, nothing is wrong. In the present moment, we can breathe. We do not have to solve anything at this moment. But we can be open to connecting with this universal field of love and truth and creativity and even benevolence that can wrap all around us in any vulnerable moment. As you breathe, I invite you to feel through your feet, the floor, and a sense of the earth underneath and any energy that comes up to you through the earth. You might even be aware of sensations or feelings or energy coming to you from any other part of your body. Support through the back, air through the lungs. You may even sense a presence that's with you already. And whatever you're receiving, I invite you to just breathe that in through your awareness, through your heart center, and allow it to grow and to inflate, to expand. And just notice and observe what seems to be there. Usually it's the first thing that comes to you, no matter how silly or different. You might notice if there's some vulnerability around what you're feeling right now. And if you do, I just invite you to be there with the feeling and just allow it to be. Breathe. And notice, is it okay for that feeling to be there? You can ask it to become an image or to show you something extra, an extra feeling, so you understand more. You can play with this energy however you want to. If you feel a bit uncertain, maybe it's about what would feel the best at this moment. Do you need to get down and hug the ground in your imagination? Do you need to hug the feeling? Maybe you want to have a conversation with it. If there's a part of you that feels vulnerable right now or has lately, you can ask that part to join you. And see what it wants to say or what it needs. Maybe it's a child or a symbol or just another part of yourself that came forward, a feeling. You can just invite it to share something with you. You can become that sensation of vulnerability and see what it needs. Whatever you're feeling, how old do you feel? What age is that feeling? Is there a memory, a circumstance attached to the way you feel? Just breathe and see if anything comes up. If something does come up, you don't have to do anything. You can just watch. Let it move through your body or play like a movie in your imagination. What does that person at that age or in that memory need the most? What is she asking for? And who can give her what she needs. And how does our vulnerable self feel when it receives what it needs in that moment? The feeling may change. There may be some movement. What color? Twirling. Every new thing is vulnerable at the beginning. And just as an experiment, if you feel like it, what is a touch point of support for you in vulnerable moments? What thing inside you or in your awareness can come forward? Person, a memory, a feeling. And I invite you to breathe that feeling in. Take it in through your whole body. There may be some tears. Vulnerability means breaking open sometimes, feeling the fragility, the sadness, or the exposure. And one last experiment to see, is there something new, interesting, that can come out of your vulnerability? And I just invite you to check in, go back to the original feeling or image you started with. Notice any changes. And you can invite that earlier feeling to meet the wisdom you learned or any new feelings that you encountered. And just notice that within your body, within the safe place of your body, there is always assistance. There is knowledge for any situation you are going through. I'm going to invite you to offer your own gratitude and then to take the next few moments to integrate what you learned in any way that feels good to you. You can stay in that energy and keep feeling it. And just a few seconds longer before we meet back. You can just take a moment to slowly come out of your process. Take a few deep breaths. And acknowledge your own bravery in going into these places. All right, ladies, just a reminder that I can pause the recording at any time if you don't want it to be recorded. And you can also request that Summer does not include this in any of her teaching or videos. Again, I don't think she shares these publicly. It's only for teaching purposes. But you can also always say that you don't want something shared. And I just invite whoever feels like it to go ahead and speak.
I'll go. Thank you very much, Naomi. So what's happening for me is there's a part of me that's been hiding my whole life because she is so scared to come out. And she is in a lot of pain. She's slowly been coming out. And so my partner and I have been going through this experience together. And I'm learning to be vulnerable. And this is the first time I've ever been in a relationship where I can do that. And I'm 95% of the time met with a whole lot of empathy. And I just realized it's me coming out of hiding, and it's a part of me. Yeah, it's a part of me coming out of hiding. And it's allowing me to actually be in a relationship for real and really be connected and be there with my whole heart and not feel like I have to protect myself and hide, which is how I've always been. I can see that now. And then I also saw my mom, and it's funny, she passed away about 3.5 weeks ago. And in the last few months, she was very different than she's ever been. A lot of walls came down, and I felt closer to her than I've ever felt in my whole life. And I realized in our meditation today, she was never able to be vulnerable. Maybe she could with her friends, I don't know, but not with me and not with the family, and certainly not with my dad. And I always felt like she was comparing me and to other girls my age, her friends' daughters and other, and I always felt like I wasn't good enough. But I realized really ultimately she couldn't be vulnerable with me. And that's why I never felt close to her. But in the last, few months where she had cancer and she was dying, and a lot of those walls came down. And it's funny because I look at pictures of her from the last few months, and I feel really connected to her. And then I look at pictures of her from years ago, and I don't feel connected to her at all. Like I can feel those walls in those pictures, and I can feel the difference. And I don't know how much of that is me and how much of that is her. Like, it's probably both of us. I'm really grateful though. I'm so grateful that I was able to actually connect with her before she passed. And actually, we could really experience each other. But I had a lot of clarity in this meditation. So as to what the heck that was, because I've like been looking at pictures of her, and I see these pictures of her my whole life up until, and her whole life up until just a few months ago, and it's like I kind of feel there's kind of a yucky feeling, right? And not that closeness that I'd experienced. So that it really explains it, and I can have way more compassion now and understand what she was going through and experiencing. So thank you.
We're all holding this space for you. We love you.
Thank you. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm very honored that you would share. Thank you. There's a lot of emotion that comes with stepping forward in vulnerability. When we were in the last, maybe even 2 workshops ago, I'm trying to remember who I was working with, but I can't. Oh, yes, I can. She hasn't come to any of these groups. And my whole thing was around hiding too. I could see myself under a kind of like a sea cave and just hiding. And the feeling was, I've been hiding my whole life. And do you think I could get out of that cave? It felt so intensely vulnerable. And the only way I could, the person suggested to me, well, don't think about what you should do, like come out of the cave, do what feels natural. And the only thing I could think to do was to sink down into the sand at the bottom of the cave in my mind's eye. And I sunk down into the sand. And it was almost like I was a turtle. I started moving forward like this in the sand, and I realized the sand was so warm in the sun and it was so full of love that by getting down close to it and soaking in the love, I could start to just push the sand and slowly move myself out of the cave. But it was only love that could move me out because it was so intensely fearful to be seen by other people. I could not believe the amount of feeling that washed over me in that session, the intense feeling of like, I need to get out of this cave, but I don't know how. It scares me to pieces. But the transformation was in staying in that energy, and then just not trying to make it into anything, just being there and then letting the next thing happen and the next thing happen. And I have felt significantly different since then. Anyone else feel okay to say anything? It's okay to pass. It's okay to be vulnerable too.
I can go. I came to a realization today that I actually have a lot of shame about my body. And I've never really thought about it in that way before. I've always been pretty fit and very active and a very reasonable weight. But there's a lot of shame there. And I was thinking back when you asked how old you were. And I remember when I was very little, the neighbor called me Pudge when I was about maybe 8. And then I did grow, and then I got very slim. But I remember since that time controlling, more what I ate and being very, very, very careful. And I'm sure that the neighbor has no idea that how that affected me, but it was super, super interesting to think back and to think where all of this may have come from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know sometimes
Yeah.
where the beginning, where it began,
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, the shame part was quite interesting to think about for me today.
Mm,
So thank you.
Thanks,
Excellent.
Lee. Yeah. Thanks very much.
I can go next. It's kind of hard for me to explain because it's really like feelings that I get in my body. I didn't really get any like concrete visions or anything. Just noticing like a lot of pain in my body, like a lot of deep feelings and kind of like heavy energy around my heart. And I was able to kind of play with that energy. It was kind of like smoke, and I was able to like lift some layers. And then my 8-year-old self came up as well, but I'm not quite sure why. I don't know what happened when I was 8, but I was like tuning into feelings of shame and guilt, and just this one was just very emotional for me, but doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like this may be one, like the way you receive information is by body feelings a lot.
Yeah.
Because that's come up a few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
The important thing is just sitting with it and feeling the shift as you keep going,
Yeah.
through your session. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. For me, I was thinking about my daughter-in-law and connecting with her because with with the virus and everything, we haven't seen each other, we haven't connected. Her birthday's coming up, and I was just thinking of losing connections, with my mom being diagnosed with leukemia recently, and my husband getting older, and just the vulnerability of that. And then I went to my grandmother, who's passed many years ago, because you said, how do you feel? And I felt really old, and how she must have felt when she was losing all her connections. And then you said, what does she need? And of course, love and acceptance. And anyways, I guess that's it. And just the fact that we all need love. And to, I guess, for me to connect with others that are feeling vulnerable.
Yeah.
And
You're not the only one feeling it, right?
right. Yeah. So, not to feel sorry for myself, but to go out and share with others, I guess. But it brought up a lot of other things that I haven't shared with other people.
Yes.
But which I'm not ready to yet. But anyway.
Yeah. We do get to find people that we can share things with. We each are worth having a place or a person that we can be our whole self, our vulnerable, shaky, uncertain self with, and be fully embraced just that way. Just have someone wrap their arms metaphorically or physically around us and say, this is okay. Yeah, just the way you are. This is okay. I cannot say how deeply honored I am with you ladies coming and just experiencing this and sharing. I'm deeply touched and honored and moved. And I'm honored that you would listen to me sharing some of my pain stories too, because this is a practice for me in honoring my whole self too. And there's even in talking with Summer yesterday a little bit, I realized there's a whole part of myself that I don't share openly because many people would not understand, but truthfully, more of us have been impacted in that way than is even publicly known. I've met so many people with the same kind of past that I've had. But it feels like a unique experience that other people wouldn't want to hear. And part of me loving myself is sharing that too, and learning how to be open about that so that the people feeling shame over that can also start to heal. So I really thank you for being here as I take my first few steps into sharing those kinds of things too. Love you all. Thank you. Oh, drink water. Be very gentle with yourselves when there's lots of emotion. You're going to be processing that for a while, and just really love on yourself today if you can. Okay. Bye.
Hi, thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you,
See you
Naomi.
all soon. Yeah. Bye-bye.